He's from Israel, Eretz Israel, from pre-state time period in of its own right. So today we're going to speak about Mr. David Tidhar, also once again important for this channel because he was editor of a 19-volume encyclopedia of the founders and builders of Israel, which compiled from 1947 until he passed away. And I think his career included the police during the British Mandate of Palestine. He was a private detective, a communal leader, and an author of various different detective stories. So he is kind of key because he will also document, let's just say, in of its own right, various different importances, let's just say, from the history of pre-state Israel and beforehand also. So who was he? I think his name when he was born was of the name David Todrosovitz. So naturally, he was from originally an Ashkenazic family, I would assume. And his parents, so he was born in Jaffa, reported in the year 1807, right at the end of the 19th century. And his parents' I think he was his parents' seventh child. But I think the first to survive, that's what's reported over there. So I'm not too sure the whole history with regards to, I'm just reading over from Wikipedia over here, friends, with regards to and just the biography. Over here. Okay, so I'm reading actually from the English edition over here. And he would attend a religious school in Jaffa's Neve Shalom Tel Aviv district over here. This district itself was established, I think, only several years beforehand in the year 1890 by someone named Zerah Barnett outside the walls of Jaffa. And I think it was this actually area itself was actually named after a verse in the book of Isaiah in chapter 32, verse 18. My people will live in a dwelling place of peace. And I think it was actually founded by his father, Moshe Bezalel Todrosovitz, over there. So very interesting. So seemingly he would have a religious education. And Moshe Todrosovitz, I think, was a famous philanthropist who had been instrumental in bringing Rabbi Avram Isaac Kook to serve as a rabbi in Jaffa. And Rabbi Kook would later on express his admiration for his son, saying he had a zechut avot that he took after his father. Very interesting enough. So there was a connection within regards to the rabbinic and chief rabbi of the Ashkenazic community, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. So he was most famously, Rabbi Avram Kook was known from the acronym the Haraya, if I'm not mistaken. He was an Orthodox rabbi and the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi of the British Mandatory of Palestine, and is considered, let's just say, one of the fathers of religious Zionism in of its own right. So very much there was a close connection. Mr. Tidhar later on would later recall his childhood in Jaffa's pre-Tel Aviv era in his various different memoirs. Now, it's actually interesting. Straight away, Mr. Tidhar was involved in community affairs from an early age, including preventing Christian missionary activity during the British Mandate period. So that was something very much, I was just speaking about this with its own right, that there were many rabbis that were trying to combat this in of its own right. I think he had a passion for football. I think come what the year 1913, he became the initiator and player of the Maccabi Tel Aviv football team. Interesting enough, so footballists, let's just say out there, would be very interested to know that communal activity, let's say, would include founding charitable organization in Gemach to provide clothing and shoes to the poor and to provide advice on, especially at that point in time, there was plagues such as cholera. So he would actually give advice how to and help him combat it during the epidemic, I think in the year 1916. In 1918, he volunteered for the Jewish Legion and was involved in the defense of Jaffa's Jews during the 1921 Jaffa riots actually took place in that specific year. I think we mentioned this beforehand, and we can see the anti-Semitism that was all throughout. And I think that just that was an entire topic onto itself. So we won't speak so much on that. Okay, so let's explore more of his career. So his early career, I think he was among the first people to join the Haganah, the self-defense group, in the year 1921. He joined and served in the British-run Palestine police force, where he initially served in Jaffa, but would soon move and become a commanding officer in West Jerusalem until 1925. And then Mr. Tidhar was very instrumental in helping Jewish people, let's say, in awkward situations. For example, the wife of a man who refused to give his wife divorce papers, Wikipedia says, and once having to work on Yom Kippur to help some refugees, where he dressed as an Arab so not to distress his fellow Jews. Now, we're going to do a quotation of what Rabbi Kook said, the chief rabbi of Israel, over here within regards to him. It's very, very interesting, actually. We're going into real historic territory. Anyone tuning in live at the moment, please subscribe to the channel at the moment. And we're exploring the history of famous historian of Israel of his day. So Rav Kook said about him, there are two men who assisted me in maintaining order in religious affairs in Jerusalem. The first being a British High Commissioner, Herbert Samuel, and the second is police officer David Tidhar. However, there is a difference between the two. The commissioner always confers first with his legal advisor, so his assistance is often delayed. Officer Tidhar, on the other hand, is diligent and energetic. He does whatever he promises quickly, overcoming all obstacles. That's what's said. I think Mr. Tidhar will actually very much acknowledge this from Avram Kook, and will actually also be quoted as saying, if I'm not mistaken, by the way, Tidhar, I think, is a very Zionistic family name. I don't know if all Tidhars are, let's just say, connected in of its own right. I've got a friend of mine, I think, with the family name Tidhar, that maybe has Afghanistani roots, if I'm not mistaken. So, that I'll have to double check. So he would actually, Mr. Tidhar, David Tidhar will actually say back after this, let's say, acknowledgement from Rav Kook, the British officers thought that they were my commanding officers, but my true commanding officer was Rabbi Kook. For me, any request of the rabbi was an order, which I tried to carry out to the best of my ability. I considered it a great privilege to fulfill the chief rabbi's wishes. And I think it was in the year 1924, Mr. Tidhar became engaged to someone named Rebecca Capiluto. She was of Hebron, if I'm not mistaken, and Rob Kook would insist the wedding be held in his own residence and that he would provide the wedding meal. So you can see, very interesting enough, a very strong connection with Rav Kook over there. And very, very interesting. I think in the year 1924, there was a demonstration in Jerusalem, and Mr. Tidhar would accosted with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini, telling him to stop the provocations that were leading to bloodshed. Who was this Amin al-Husseini? He was a Palestinian Arab nationalist, a Muslim leader at that time period of mandatory Palestine. And I think it was a scion of the al-Husseini family of Jerusalemite Arab nobles, who trace origins to the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Very, just a tidbit in of itself. Now, I think come with the year 1926, he would open a private investigation bureau in Tel Aviv, and the firm actually would specialize in commercial investigations for local banks and companies. Come with December 1926, he would publish an article in a Tel Aviv weekly. At that point in time, he would, let's say, be critical and of the commanding officer of mandatory police force. He was, let's say, that he was realizing that he was liable to be tried and possibly imprisoned for it. He would then move to Cairo with his wife, and they had their infant daughter. And he would return eventually to Tel Aviv in 1931 and would reopen his bureau. Throughout the years, he put his particular knowledge of Arab affairs and of the mandatory government at the disposal of the Yishuv institutions and of the Jewish agency over there. Very interesting enough. Friends, anyone tuning in live at the moment, we are exploring the history of Mr. David Tidhar, who is an author of an encyclopedic work, a very, very important encyclopedic work with regards to the founding of Medinat Israel and Eretz Israel and Jerusalem, the building up of it over here. So if you are new to our community, welcome to our community. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. At the moment, we are nearing, at the moment, a staggering 9,000 subscribers. And one of the only few you'll find out there that will actually, talk and grapple with the history of various different Rabbonim, personalities, which many people won't necessarily speak much about in modern day, but really, really did, let's just say, huge amounts in of its own right. So that very, very important information over here that we are saying over. So very interesting. And everyone, once again, welcome to our channel over here. Okay, so we will explore a bit more within regards to him. There's a lot to state over. And it's always good to speak about historians and there's something about it. And very, very much enjoy speaking about it over here. I think it's probably, we've recorded about maybe a good 10 or 15 historians already here inside the series, which is very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so we will continue now. Just I'm at the moment putting just a picture on the thumbnail of, so that everyone can actually benefit by just seeing who the personality was in himself, Mr. David Tidhar was, because it's always good when you're seeing a personality it's you connect much more automatically when one is doing that. Okay, so afterwards, I think it was somewhat. Okay, let's talk later career now. I think he was never involved with a specific political party. Remember, he passed away in the year 1970, so he was 73 years of age. So this would be 25 years after, or 22 years after the formation of Medinat Israel. So he was never involved with a political party, but he stayed friends with all factions in of itself. He started publishing books and articles. With the first work, while he was still a police officer, I think, there was a book called Criminals and Crimes in Eretz Israel, which would later be translated in both English and Arabic. In the 1930s, someone named Shlomo Ben Yisrael, he would found the Detective Library, wrote a series of weekly chapbooks with Mr. Tidhar as a protagonist, seen now as a progenitor of Hebrew detective literature. I think the character appeared in 28 short detective novels that would let's say, cause a stare reported over in the community in the 1930s. Now, let's say his magnum opus in of itself was his 19-volume encyclopedia of the founders and builders of Israel, giving biographical detail on many of the people who were involved in the first Aliyah and subsequent Aliyot also. And who's who, let's just say, of the Jewish community in Israel. And this work would start in 1947. He would continue this for 23 years until he passed away in the year 1970. Very interesting enough. On the day of his death, he had gone to the printer with new material, but sadly he suffered a heart attack and died at the age of 73. He requested information about and photographs of the, let's say, early founders of Israel from relatives, friends, and would do about 6,000 biographies, about 5,816 pages, many of whom don't appear in various other sources. And that's something that we're trying to do here in our community. We've already recorded biography videos about 1,500 rabbis, and we plan to do many, many more. And many of these people, especially in the English language, are not mentioned much about. His document collection and photographs is now at the Archives Department of the National Library of Israel in Jerusalem as a David Tidhar archive, if I'm not mistaken. And the encyclopedia itself, I think, was put online by the Torah College with the permission of the Tidhar family. Following the success of this work, Mr. Tidhar became a full-time writer. Other published works include Between Hammer and Anvil in 1932, and collections of articles in and out of uniform, memoirs of his public activity between 1912 to 1937, the Maccabi album, Jaffa Tel Aviv, 1906-1956, and In the Service of My Country, which contained memoirs, documents, photographs from 1912 to 1960. And in 1966, Mr. Tidhar published a book dedicated to Israeli Masonic Lodge Bar Kai, of which he had been a member of in 1926. So very, very interesting. We're going to speak a bit more within regards to him in the next minute or so. We're just going to take a short break for a minute, and we'll be back in 1 minute. So just watch your space, and we'll come back in 1 minute time, friends. Understand coming back in a few minutes. I'm filling the door. Just give her a game. Hi, shalom everyone. Thanks for being patient over here. So we're exploring just a bit of the history of Mr. Tidhar, David Tidhar, who was a famous encyclopedian, let's just say, in of his day, and Zionist, and someone very close to Rob Cook, the chief rabbi of Israel. So let's speak a bit more. He would get commemorated various different awards. I think in September 1970, 3 months before he passed away, the World Association of Detectives awarded the association's annual award to Mr. David Tidhar for his activities in the field of detectives. The organization awarded him the prize for being the father of Hebrew detectives also, and the pioneer of Hebrew detective literature. In 2016, Eli Eshed, who was also editor of a Yekum Tarbut and the Ramat Sharon municipality, established the Tidhar Citation Award for detective fiction in Israel with Arias Sivan, if I'm not mistaken, as the first winner. And I think it was documentary, I think in 2024, with regards to murder cases that he investigated. There's streets named after him in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Rishon LeZion, and Petach Tikva. He got married to Mrs. Rebecca Capiluto in 1924, and they would have two children, Betzalel Tidhar and Esther Rachel White, if I'm not mistaken. It's very, very interesting, and much of his collections are featured, let's just say, in various different libraries worldwide, and so on and so forth. So very, very interesting that we are putting him out. And I think Capiluto was a famous Hebron family, if I'm not mistaken, and there's much connected to, let's just say, on various different bulletins, I think, from Hebron during that specific day. So very interesting. And here on this channel, we do try and explore all different rabbis and so on and so forth. So that's also, so we talked about the various different, I think there's a Beit Chinuch Tidhar also, and inside a Beit Sefer, so a educational network frame in of its own right. He had many great books and many important books, let's just say, in of its own right. I think the Bein HaPatish VaSedan, the B'madim Bulo Madim, B'shirut HaMoledet, Chot'im V'Chata'im Be'eretz Yisrael, Sefer HaAchim, Album HaMakabi, encyclopedia לחלוצי היישוב ובניו בימים ההם, and Nevei Tzedek in of itself. So there was many let's just say books of its time, and yeah, very, very interesting. Now I think he had various different friends that were also famous figures in its own right. One of them was someone named Yosef Yekutiel, for example, who was also, let's just say, I think more in the sports field. He's very famous, and in the sports field himself, this Yosef Yekutiel, who's quite close in this picture together. He was a founder of the Maccabiya Israel Football Association, an Israeli Olympic Committee, and he won an Israeli prize in 1979, a special contribution to society and the state in sports. And if you watch our channel over here, we have recorded videos, if you can recollect, within regards to Kfar Maccabiya, and I believe there is a wing over there called Yekutiel. So I'm pretty sure that is actually connected to him, and it's actually interesting. This Yosef Yekutieli was actually, if I'm not mistaken, learning in David Yellin College of Education in Jerusalem originally, somewhere we visited also on this channel, and would also be very much part of Jaffa. He was working in Eretz Yisrael office and would actually play for Maccabi Tel Aviv also, which is very interesting. And he would do, I think, with Eretz Yisrael Football Association in 1928, and he was very involved with Maccabiya, the place that we visited here on this channel on various occasions for and filmed around there. Something that we very much have to point out, and was also recognized with many different awards and recognitions just worldwide. His name was Yosef Yekutieli, so I'm not too sure about. I think he was actually born in Karutz Bereza in the Russian Empire. He would die in Tel Aviv, but I think there was a close connection between David Tidhar and him. Also, there's a picture of them together, which is very, very interesting. So you can see he had a very well decorated history in of its own right. He was actually born with a different name, David Todrotsovit. So I'm not too sure at what stage he would change his family name to Tidhar over there. So that's also very, very interesting. And I think there was other famous people of that point in time, like Nissim Malul, for example, David Elmog. These were other famous chroniclers of that window of time, like Nissim Malul, for example. I think lived between 1892 to 1959. He was also a historian, a translator, a journalist, a Zionist in of its own right. And he actually, interesting enough, he was born in Sfat, Mr. Nissim Malul, and was the son of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Malul, which came from a famous family of Rabbonim from Tunisia, if I'm not mistaken. And he was actually a Talmid of Rav Yeshua Pelagi, who was a great rabbi, probably from the Pelagi dynasty in of its own right. But he would also become a great author and educator, and I think he would be connected, if I'm not mistaken, somehow to Mr. David Tidhar. That's something very much we have to point out over here. And friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of a famous chronicler and encyclopedia writer of Israel, Mr. David Tidhar, here on this special edition over here. So if it's the first time you are here, welcome to our community over here. It's actually interesting, this Mr. Nissim Malul will actually translate various works, if I'm not mistaken. One of them was Chota'im V'Chata'im Be'eretz Yisrael, Me'et David Tidhar B'Targum La'Aravit. So interesting enough, so some of the books were connected at that point in time. There's something very much we have to point out within regards to the two of them. So yeah, very interesting. So you can see how there was connections and so on and so forth. I think he would translate that book. Just to say another word regards to Mr. Nissim Malul, he was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he would actually eventually move to Cairo and get a doctorate over there, study philosophy. He was possibly in the Cairo University, if I'm not mistaken. He was an expert with regards to Hebrew, and he founded various different Zionistic organizations, also just like we spoke about David Tidhar did. He would actually form other Zionistic organization groups, I think, in the early 1900s in of its own right, and was just very famous of that point in time. And a lot of these chroniclers, I think it's important to speak about them, how it evolves the Jewish community history at different points. It's very, very interesting. And there was other famous ones. Said Malki, for example, another educator. He was an Egyptian Jewish journalist, if I'm not mistaken, an educator of Cairo in of its own right. Hopefully we will maybe speak about him at a later stage. There's also Shimon Moyal, if I'm not mistaken, another famous journalist of his time. His life didn't really overlap. Yeah, he overlapped slightly with David Tidhar, if I'm not mistaken. He was also a doctor, if I'm not mistaken, and came from merchants and was very, very famous. Also, I think he was actually Moroccan, if I'm not mistaken, and very, very interesting. So we do plan on recording more videos of famous biblical, let's just say, translators, encyclopedia writers, and so on and so forth. But it looks like a very impressive, large collection he would actually write, and much of it is actually, if I'm not mistaken, actually chronicled over in the Hebrew Library and various different libraries across the world, as he was obviously a very, very famous editor at the time. I think there's actually a website out there within regards to his work. The Jewish Virtual Library will also chronicle him, National Library of Israel. He's also part of the JewishHeroes.live website, where they also do speak about him also, and the various articles online. And you can also see, I think, on Google Books, if I'm not mistaken, some important let's say importances within regards to him. So very interesting. His full-time writing, he would actually write various other writings in of its own right, and the Torah College in of itself would also let's just say continuing writing and so on and so forth within regards to him. He's featured in Jewish Virtual Library, we have to point out, and Tidhar was a hero of the first published Hebrew detective stories, as it states out, and just really basically says whatever we said within regards to that. It was in the 1950s he turned his time period into the full writing brothers. We will say another word about him in a minute, just because there is some information online. There's a lot of pictures about him on the internet also, so that's something that we have to point about. We will say another word from him. So in the meantime, I'll come back in another minute, and please subscribe in the meantime to our community and to our channel, and we'll be back in 1 minute. So just to share another word within regards to him. Okay, sorry everyone, thanks for being patient. Just brought the baby inside, not baby anymore, she's a toddler now, just inside the room. So she wants to hear some words of history within regards to famous Jewish personalities of Israel. And I think it was also quite close to one of the founders of the Haganah in the initial years, someone named Meir Rothberg, if I'm not mistaken. And they were known as the daredevils, let's just say, in of its own right. And I think they would really inspire the people of Jewish quarters of Jaffa at that point in time, and would help. He was seen as a man that would help very much many people. He was a Turkish citizen also. I think he was drafted, if I'm not mistaken, to the Ottoman army in 1917. So we could see many things. I think he had action also to Mayor Dizengoff, who would become a mayor of Tel Aviv at one point in time. And you can see he He was also, I think in November 1917, there was published a letter from the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild, in which he promised to create a Jewish national home in Palestine. Jewish communities around the world welcomed this decision and began forming armed forces to defend their future Jewish home. I think Cumberry II, 1918, the first Jewish battalion marched along the main streets of London with their bayonets, let's just say, attached. And David Tidhar became one of the first fighters of the 40th Battalion of the Royal Riflemen of the British Army, with which he soon left to fight in Egypt and returned in 1919 originally. And they talk more about his history here on the Jewish Heroes Live website. And he was a young veteran of the Jewish Legion, if I'm not mistaken, at that point in time. And I think it was in December 1921 when David Tidhar was officially invited to serve in the British Mandate Police at that point in time. And you can see there's a whole chronicles. They've got many pictures about him on this website. And there's a lot to be said with regards to him. I think he closely observed the actions of Syrian Palestinian Congress, and especially the famous Arab leader Abdurrahman Shahbenda, who was preparing an uprising in the territory of the Mandate. And during the Palestine riots in August 1929, Mr. Tidhar proposed his plan for a settlement to the leadership of the Mandate Police, but did not receive a response from the Egypt. And he remained in Egypt until 1931, did huge amounts of detective work, very much, let's just say, spoken about. He writes about it later on, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was in April 19th, 1936, he would transport Jews who remained in Jaffa in Arab houses to Tel Aviv and go around the city. I think something occurred at that point in time. And he was in close contact with other people like Eliyahu Golom of the Haganah and people from the Lehi, if I'm not mistaken. He was very interesting. I think the book, to be precise, was actually titled, if I'm not mistaken, it was, just to be precise, it was called, over there, the Encyclopedia of Yeshuv Pioneers and Its Builders, People and Photos, Portraits. And it was 24 years. He prepared materials of the history of the old and new Yeshuv in 19 volumes, containing 5,816 pages with data on more than 6,000 people. So you can see what an encyclopedia is, and what a famous person he is in of itself. I think in 1966, Tidhar published a book dedicated to the Israeli Masonic Lodge Barkai, of which he had been a member of since 1926. So very, very interesting, friends. It was a special edition over here. We spoke about Mr. David Tidhar. We're going to leave it here. I'm going to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom Uvrach. We're just about to come inside the Shabbat at the moment. I'm wishing you all well. Remember, friends, we're a community over here. We're learning about great rabbis of yesteryear, really and interesting Zionistic personalities, Jewish personalities, Mr. David Tidhar. Don't forget, friends, to subscribe to the channel and join. We're nearing 9,000 subscribers. And keep up the great work. And thanks everyone for watching. And Shabbat Shalom to you all. Thank you.